All right, good morning, everyone. On behalf of SACAC, we would like to welcome you to the first ever virtual drive-in workshop. There's a lot of people I want to thank initially. Allison Tate just has been an incredible co-chair. One of the great things about today's virtual drive-in workshop hosted and sponsored by SACAC is that Allison created questions and she gave our presenters questions that you want to know about, including mental health, COVID-19. We're not going to bring up these buzzwords. We're not going to bring up unparalleled, unprecedented. We're making this solely about yourself. Now, I want to give you a quick run through about what's going to happen today. From 9 to about 9:03, I'm going to give you my introduction. And then from 9:03 to about 9:40, we will have a general session about trends in higher education. After that, we're going to go into 3 breakout sessions. We're going to have our PCUF community, our regional group, and HBCU Nation. Please know, unfortunately, for the first breakout session, HBCU won't be able to attend. So we'll be speaking with myself about SACAC and NACAC trends, but they will be in later. And then we will be closing up with our state university system. I thought last year we had a great team. This year we have a rock star team. We have vice presidents, deans, directors, you name it from that institution, they are here, and they are here to help support and advocate for you and your students. Please know all the recordings will be available on SACAC once we're done, but please, nothing to be concerned about during the breakout sessions. Our presenters will be moving from one room to another. As college counselors and school counselors, you will be staying in the same room. We will be making everything much easier for each one of you. But again, on behalf of SACAC, Allison, and all of our presenters, thank you for joining us today. And without further ado, I would love to introduce not only just a colleague, but really someone that's been an incredible mentor in my life, Dr. Gareth Fowles, as we begin speaking about trends in higher education. And Dr. Fowles is the Vice President of Enrollment Management at Lynn University. And I'll see everybody roughly at about 9:40.
Thanks very much, Freddie. I appreciate the introduction. You've got a very set and defined schedule. So I'll just set my stopwatch here to make sure that I stay on track and they not mess things up. But a special round of appreciation. And if all of you can just give Freddie and Tate, Allison Tate, a round of applause for all their time and effort that they've devoted to this program. The agenda looks really great. And to all our presenters that are already on with us this morning, thanks very much to you as well. It's great to see so many familiar faces with your cameras on. If you feel comfortable putting your camera on, please put your camera on. I enjoyed looking at Nancy's background and all the pennants on her background, and I was looking to see if Lynn Universities was there, but I didn't see it. I saw St. Leo's and FIU's. So Nancy, if you don't have a Lynn one, we need to send you one, and anyone else that doesn't have a Lynn pennant, please let us know and we'll be happy to send you one. It's great to see so many of my colleagues from colleges and universities around the country, as well as all of you from private and public schools, as well as independent counselors with us today. When Freddie asked me to present today, he had provided me the RSVP form that you had filled out, and I combed through all the responses, and there was definitely a clear and definitive message that you wanted delivered. You wanted to see the state of education on the secondary side as well as post-secondary side, how COVID has impacted, and you wanted to know about colleges and universities in the state of Florida. So in my presentation, I've tried to cover all of that in the short little time period that that Freddie has allotted to me. So I'm just pulling things to the side. First, before I begin my presentation, I'd like to thank all of you as high school counselors and independent counselors for everything that you have done in these trying times to provide the adequate counsel, support, and guidance to students throughout these interesting times, and to allow them to find the right colleges and universities for them, where they're going to thrive and where their talents and characteristics and traits will be well served. So special round of applause to you, and a special and deep and heartfelt gratitude for everything that you have done for our students on behalf of all our SACAC institutions. I'm going to first take a look at secondary education, then I'll move into post-secondary, and then I'll move into Lynn. But because it's early in the morning, it's 9 o'clock, some of you are just having your first sip of coffee. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page and that I keep you engaged. So we're going to run a quick poll. And the first question is, how many high school graduates were there in 2019? I'm going to give you a couple of seconds, if you wouldn't mind just answering the question. How many high school graduates were there in 2019? Really interesting to see some of the responses coming in. It's all over the map at this stage. No clear answer. Looks like we might have a winner at this stage as people. Right, if we could stop that. There's a clear winner in terms of those of you that know how many high school graduates. There are 3.8 million students that graduated high school. When we look at the number of high school graduates in the United States over the past couple of years, from 1992 up until 2026, there's been a proliferation in terms of the number of high school graduates. As you can see, from 2.7 million, in 2020, we're up to about 3.8. So we've had a nice increase. Up until 2027, we'll see another nice increase there. Unfortunately, from 2027 all the way through 2037, we're going to have a rather stark drop-off to the tune of around 400,000 less high school graduates. This has severe consequences for not only you on the secondary side, but for us on colleges and universities as well. So you might ask, why have these increases come about and why have these decreases come about? It's all based on US Census data and it's all based on the number of births every year. In 2025, there were 4.1 million births here in the United States. For 2019, that had dropped to 3.7 million. So a decrease of 9.8% or 400,000 less babies were born. As we all know, in 17, 18 years' time, those babies are hopefully heading off to colleges and universities. And we all as institutions know that there's been a huge demographic shift that's taking place, but there's also something that we have to account for. And in many cases, we know that COVID has impacted that as well. And I'll get to that in a later point. As we look at the number of high school graduates all around the country, it's not quite the same in terms of the drop-off or the increase. When we look from 2015 to 2037, in that time period, the West is going to have 129,000 less high school graduates. The Midwest is going to have 98,000 less high school graduates. The Northeast is going to have 79,000 less graduates. And the South is going to have 100,000 less graduates, totaling close to 400,000 that I have already alluded to. When we look at the states that produce the most number of high school graduates, there's 10 states that account for 50% of high school graduates in the United States. I've listed these for you below. You can see that over the next couple of years until 2025, there's a couple of states, including Florida and Texas, that there's going to be a rather significant increase in the number of high school graduates. There's a couple of states that, as you can see, are going to see a decrease, predominantly in Michigan, Ohio, and Illinois. When we move from 25 to 37, you can see that most states that produce the most number of high school graduates are going to see a decrease. All of them except Florida, where you see that we have an increase of 6% projected. Given that we are a SACAC group here, and the majority of you, as we looked at the RSVPs, are from Florida. A couple of you are representing other states, but you'll see how this pertains to us as our community. All of our respective states will see, for the most part, a decline, with Mississippi experiencing the highest decline. South Carolina and Texas will see a bit of a bump, and Florida will have that highest bump at around 18%. When we look at the number of high school graduates that you correctly alluded to, that we had 3.8 million students, 90% of those are coming from the public high school side, and 10% are coming from private institutions. So what does that mean for us? 90% are from public institutions, 10% being from private. So from 2017 all the way through 2037, we will see that there's going to be somewhat of an increase in some populations for private schools. And unfortunately, we're going to see that population declining in the coming years for our public schools. All the way through 2037, public schools will see a decrease of 5%, while our private schools will see an increase of 4%. When we look at what this means from a racial or ethnicity standpoint, from this year moving forward, we will see some increases in the Hispanic population, as well as Asian or Pacific Islander. The Hispanic population is going to increase by just over 50,000, and the Asian Pacific Islander will increase just under 50,000. You will see that our African American population will decrease over that time period, while the white population will decrease rather significantly to the tune of 300,000 high school graduates in that time period. So when we look at this, we say that there's some interesting metrics that are being talked about, and there are some interesting strategies that need to be put in place, not only for those of you on the secondary side, but certainly for those of us on the post-secondary side, because this dearth in the number of high school graduates from 2020 all the way through to 2037, that decrease of 400,000 will impact certain institutions more so than others, and will impact institutions in certain regions more so than others. So for those of us on the college and university side, we're very closely watching this and have been closely watching this for the past 10 years. What has been interesting is, as we've looked at the enrollment in post-secondary institutions across the country, whether they are private, public, whether they are in rural or urban settings, all institutions or sectors have been impacted. Brandon Bustede came out with this article in Forbes magazine a couple of weeks ago, and he said it's pretty much inevitable that enrollment in US higher education will be down for 10 consecutive years. This year being the 10th consecutive year. It's rather startling to think about that unfortunately in US higher education, one of the premium levels of education that is provided in the world, our enrollment in post-secondary education has been declining for the past 9 years and is likely to be declining for a 10th year. Another quick poll just to make sure that you're still with me and still paying attention. If you could take a quick stab at how many students are enrolled in post-secondary institutions. See a number of different responses coming in, which is great. No clear defined winner at this stage. We've got almost 70% of you have responded. There's now a clear leading indicator of how many students are with us. Great. As many of you had indicated, there's 17.5 million students in post-secondary institutions. Well done for those of you that accurately indicated that. So what does that mean for us? When we look just back at spring 2011, it seems like an eternity ago, but in some cases it doesn't seem that far away. It was only 10 years ago. The national trends, the national numbers show us that in spring 2011, there was 19.6 million students enrolled in post-secondary institutions around the country. As of spring 2020, just a year ago, there was only 17.5 million students enrolled in post-secondary institutions. If you do the quick maths, it's pretty easy to figure out that that's 2.1 million less students in post-secondary institutions. When we look more closely just at the past 3 years, we see that in fall 2018, it was 18.2 million students in post-secondary institutions. For 2019, that had dropped to 17.9 million students. In fall 2020, that had dropped, as I just showed you, to 17.5 million students. So just in that 3-year time period, we have less than 705,000 less students. That's how quick things are changing in higher education. Once again, unfortunately, what does that mean for institutions? We haven't even started talking about the pandemic. we've seen over the past couple of years that unfortunately there's been colleges and universities all across the country that have even closed their doors or merged with other institutions. Fortunately, it hasn't been as catastrophic as some people like Clayton Christensen and other people had projected for our sector. But unfortunately, there have been institutions that have closed. And even today, we're seeing some of those institutions close. You might have seen just recently, within the last week, that an institution in Massachusetts, Becker College, that has been in effect for over 150 years, has stopped recruiting for fall 2022. Part of that is some of these demographics, and part of that is COVID related. When we look at just the undergraduate enrollments, so that 17.5 million students is all sectors and all students in post-secondary institutions. If we just focus on the undergraduate population, you will see that in fall 2019, 15.5 million students were enrolled in colleges and universities. For 2020, that had dropped to 14.9 million. Once again, this is a combination of the demographic shifts, but we're also now starting to see the impact that COVID had on students that have graduated from high school and want to come into our respective colleges and universities. So we saw a decrease of 3.6%. That's also students that were already in colleges and universities, and they're willing to persist to earn a respective degree from institutions all around the country. When we look more closely at those first-time, full-time students coming directly from high school into colleges and universities from fall 2019 to 2020, we will see that there were 300,000 less students, a rather huge decline of 13.1%. It's the largest decline since WICHE and other entities have been measuring these numbers. When we look at how this impacted our young adults joining us, we will see that men, more so than women, were more adversely impacted from one year to the next, from fall 2019 to 2020. As you can see, the decrease in males was 5.1%, whereas females, it was 0.7%. When we look at how our SACAC institutions were impacted this past fall, while it was only really a couple of months ago, probably about 7 or 8 months ago, once again seems an eternity for many of us. But once again, it was only a couple of months ago. And when we look at how our institutions within SACAC were impacted, some institutions in respective states were once again impacted more so than others. Fortunately for us here in Florida, we didn't get maybe impacted quite as severely as some of our contemporaries in other states. And here in Florida, our numbers actually increased by 1.3% to just under 1 million students. Something that is very important, I think, for all of us to take into consideration and for us to continue to collaborate together, continue to find innovative, creative ways to make sure that we are meeting the goals of our diversity, inclusion, and equity goals and objectives within our particular institutions. What we saw from high school graduates in 2019, unfortunately, there is still a huge disparity between students from high poverty schools, low income schools, and high minority schools that are actually going on to colleges and universities. You can see on this graphic that I've represented that the number of students, the percentage of students coming from these particular types of institutions are not as high as those that are coming from low poverty schools, high income schools, and low minority schools. And it's incumbent upon all of us as professionals to continue to strive, continue to collaborate, to find ways that we provide our particular institutions more amenable and accessible and inclusive to students from these types of schools. So now that I've covered the trends of what's going on in secondary institutions as well as post-secondary institutions from a rather macro level, I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes taking a look at how COVID has really impacted us on the colleges and universities side. There's really a preponderance that's coming through that's saying many things have changed for colleges and universities. One, as all of you have seen, many of you have seen this on your respective campus as well, there's definitely been an acceleration to the adoption of online and hybrid learning. Many of our institutions have said that creating online programs have been difficult in the past. But it was truly incredible to see how all of our faculty members from institution to institution, not only here in Florida, but around the country, pivoted very quickly to move those traditional curriculums to an online or hybrid learning environment that provided synchronous as well as asynchronous opportunities for students to continue to learn. Unfortunately, what COVID has done is it's exacerbated the equity and access issues. I just alluded to some of those earlier on, but early indicators are we are seeing that low socioeconomic families, students of color, and first-generation students are being impacted more significantly than other populations as a result of COVID. What COVID has also done is it's exposed the financial fragility of many institutions. I just talked about Becker College in the Northeast as potentially one of those institutions that is feeling the impact of COVID. And I would say that probably a large percentage of institutions all around the country have definitely felt the impact of COVID in one way or another. And what there seems to be is many discussions taking place about the traditional academic calendar. Even for us here at Lynn University in a short time period, our academic calendar has changed, and I'll share that with you in a moment. Here at the university, we've changed our academic calendar. We used to have a 16-week term in the fall and the spring. We moved to a block schedule, which is a 4x4 calendar that we now have. Our students in the fall as well as in the spring now take classes in 4-week increments, and we have 4 terms within that period. So we've completely revised the way that our students learn, the way that our professors teach, and the times that we are offering these courses. Also, we believe that summer is probably going to become more predominant for students to be able to learn. Our faculty members are creating iBooks and eBooks. We've an accelerated degree program here at the institution where students are able to earn their degree within 3 years, not the usual 4-year program. We started looking more closely at our online programs to determine, are we able to offer an education at a more affordable price point for students and to provide an opportunity for students to learn in more unconventional ways than what we typically have exposed to students to. And over the past couple of years, we've inserted a career preparation course that all first-year students are required to take, because we know that the rhyme and reason as to why students are coming to colleges and universities over the past couple of years is really changing. And while many of us in colleges and universities want to stress the need for students to evolve their broad horizons and their critical thinking skills and so forth, in many cases, students are coming to our institutions to earn a job and to go on to graduate schools. In the admissions office, we know that changes have needed to be made. Thanks to all of you at high schools and universities for dealing with this new environment that we had, where the testing agencies has really made it challenging for you, for us, and predominantly for our students. We all know that in many cases, students have been evaluated on their cognitive measures. This has been around for a long time, but many institutions, including Lynn University, are now looking at non-cognitive abilities for us to start measuring students' aptitude and abilities to perform well within our respective institutions. We've made some adjustments to our application to start measuring some of these non-cognitive abilities, that we can start including those in the application to provide, once again, a holistic view of finding ways that will be impactful to measuring a student's ability to be successful and graduate within our respective institution. This article came out a number of years ago, and it said 85% of jobs that today's students would do in 2013 don't exist yet. Just think back a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Jobs like cloud-based computer engineering, SEO strategist, social media manager, an Uber driver. Some of these jobs never existed several years ago. And the 85% of jobs that students would do in 2030 don't even exist today. We know that 1/3 of the US labor force will change jobs every year. Individuals, Generation Z, will have on average 12 jobs by the time that they're 48. That's rather staggering. Certainly my population, my generation, we've typically stayed in one particular career, one particular industry, or maybe moved once or twice. Generation Z, that's not going to be the case for them. 92% of nearly 900 executives said soft skills were equally important or more important than technical skills. This was an article that came out in Wall Street Journal a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, 89% of these executives said that they have a very or somewhat difficult time finding employees with the requisite skills. We know that the requisite skills are changing. These soft skills are becoming more and more important for organizations, for employees all around the world. We need to make sure, and what we are doing here at Lynn University, is that our students that are graduating with a Lynn University degree are graduating with all of these skills embedded regardless of what particular major you're graduating from. Something that we are taking into consideration is how COVID is impacting the environment that is going to be that environment that many of our college graduates are actually going to go into. You can see from February to April of 2020, there were certain industries that were more adversely impacted than others. Obviously, leisure and hospitality, there was 8.2 million jobs that fell away. Trade and transportation, 3.4 million. Even in education, if you look at private education and health services, 2.8 million. Fortunately, some of those jobs have recovered from April until 2021. Some sectors are recovering quicker than others, but we're making sure that we are aware of which sectors are coming back and which sectors are still struggling. We're also taking a very close look at where jobs are being created around the country. As all of us know, recruiting students from the Northeast is becoming more and more challenging for us, particularly for us here in Florida. What we're also doing is paying a very mindful eye on where jobs are being created around the country. This map indicates from 2017 until 2030 where the predominant job growth is going to come from. And if you look closely, you will see that the dark areas are those areas where predominant growth is going to come from. Texas, Arizona, and more places on the West Coast. Fortunately for us in Florida, you will see that we're up there at 13.9%. In the Northeast, you'll see that those respective regions, job growth is not taking place at the same rate as what we are seeing in Florida and some places on the West. Here at Lynn University, talking about job growth, we've been very fortunate, thanks to the help of many of you that have encouraged your students to consider Lynn University, encouraged your students to apply to the institution, and encouraged your students to enroll at the institution. Our enrollment at the university is just over 3,000 students. This is the highest enrollment in the university's history. Our spring enrollments, which we currently have, is once again the highest enrollment in the university's history, despite some of these demographic shifts that are taking place and despite COVID. You'll see that we've broken it down into our respective divisions: undergraduate division, our online division, and our graduate division. We have students coming to us from all around the world, from 45 states and over 100 countries. So even though we are a rather small institution in terms of higher education in general, we have this uncanny ability to be able to attract students from all around the world. 19% of our students come from 100 or so countries. Looking particularly at Florida, we're really pleased about how we've grown our enrollment from Florida over the past couple of years. And this is once again a testament to you as counselors and the work that you're doing with all of our students and encouraging them to attend all of our institutions, because there's incredible institutions in our state, from our state institutions to our private institutions in Florida. We at Lynn University have been very fortunate to benefit from you advocating for students to attend our institution. From 2018 to 2020, we've enrolled close to 600 students. That's 32% of our incoming class this past fall. Those students have come from 258 of your schools, 163 were public, and 95 were private. So once again, thanks so much for your support. I'm going to show you a quick video that demonstrates how Lynn University has evolved through COVID, and to give you some deeper insights into who we are as an institution.
The writing was on the wall. 2020 would be our biggest year yet. Freshmen completed service projects for a better future while we honored the legacies of those who passed. Online programs earned accolades and the spring semester began. But as fast as we returned to campus, we learned to stay at home. Technology kept us on track and together while we were apart. Students were determined. Alumni showed their spirit. Faculty and staff got creative as drive-through tours became the norm. Confetti dropped for the class of 2020, and our community cried for social and racial justice. Soon, we were on the road to reopening. Flights took off, block scheduling emerged, and we embraced a safer way to live, learn, and work. New milestones were around every corner. We welcomed the second largest freshman class. U.S. News recognized our value and diversity. Fighting Nights masked up. We celebrated our founding. This year, we were determined. We were persistent. We were resilient. We found a common comfort in an uncommon situation. A love for Lynn. What's your common thread?
So thanks very much for your time this morning. I appreciate you joining us today. I appreciate everyone's involvement in the program. And once again, a heartfelt sense of gratitude and appreciation for everything that you are doing for our students in these trying times. Thanks, Freddie. Back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Garrett. As we described, we were discussing trends in higher education. Now, in a few minutes, we're going to go into our breakout room sessions. So we're going to give you a quick bathroom break as well. But here's the itinerary until about 11:10. So beginning right away, we're going to have one of our breakout rooms will be led by the PCUF institutions. So we have John Sullivan from Eckerd, Brent Benner from the University of Tampa, and then we have Faye from Rollins. Faye, I'm gonna apologize ahead of time. English isn't my first language, so I know I was gonna mispronounce your name. After that, we're going to have Augustus Mitchell from Florida A&M go into one of the sessions, and the third one will be led once more by our regional group. Now, this is very important for everybody to know. As our presenters will be moving from one breakout room to another after 30 minutes. If you're in the second breakout room, you will stay there until 11:10. At 11:10, we will all come back to the general session and we will have our state university system speak. But right now, we're going to give you a quick 5-minute break. Our first breakout sessions will begin at 9:40, so we will see you shortly. All right, everyone, as you're either getting your Cuban coffee or going to the restroom quick, what we are going to do is we're going to open up the breakout rooms just so our presenters can be ready. So if you're in room 2, You're going to be with me for about 30 minutes. I'll see you all soon.
Hi, Shannon. How are you?
Hi,
Hi,
sorry.
I just wanted to see, can you see an option to join a breakout room on the bottom of your screen?
Join breakout.
Perfect. Can you go there? I just want to see. Thanks.
she'll help moderate that. Thank you for your flexibility on starting at 11:10. We were able to speak with SACAC. So we have until 11:55 if necessary. And just, on our side, what we did is we sent all the public school and college counselors an invite that potentially this can close at 11:55. So we will not be closing this abruptly at 11:30 because we know that this is one of the sessions that most of the college counselors wanted to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Addison, I feel like from all the reviews we saw, everybody was like, the state university system, SUS. But I will hand it over to Allison, but we are here to support you. We have our team at Lynn on the back end working the production side. So hopefully there's no issues. Everybody should be a co-host.
Thank you so much for all of your support, and Allison for managing. We really do appreciate the opportunity, and school counselors are incredibly important to all of us. So thank you for the time, and we'll do whatever we can.
They're very excited. I mean, especially right now, I know that right now is when our kids are all, not only trying to decide where they're going to go, but also the juniors are starting to get really nervous seeing the seniors get their acceptances or not their acceptances or all the different pathways, and everybody, there's so many questions and things are being flooded, and everybody's signing up for next year for course selection. So more than ever, like, this is when I'm getting 50,000 questions a day from all sorts of people. So we really appreciate it. And it's just, every institution in Florida is so different, and everybody does things in a different way and on a different timeline and with a different application or a different way of reporting your grades. So, it's always so good to have any contact with the SUS, because just getting everything straightened out is always so helpful. So thank you. They're very appreciative. Freddie, am I running the slideshow or are you?
Actually, what we all like to do? Would you like to run your own slideshows? Everybody should have share screen access, so completely up to you. Here's my advice. Our group has been pretty chatty this morning. My advice is have individuals that can help moderate the chat room and maybe answer questions.
Right. I have the slideshow up to share for you if you want me to. It's up to you.
Yeah, I think that would be easier since we're all really focused on our content and making sure like there's a transition to the next person. So that would be super helpful, Allison. And if we get stuck, we'll just say next slide, please.
Yes. Yeah, just let me know if I'm hanging out.
That's kind of been our cadence in all of our virtual stuff. So that would just be really, really helpful. And we'll do our best to keep an eye on the chat as well. And we really want to, I think, focus on questions where our answers really could be representative as much as possible. And we know that there tends to be, and I see Julie's in the chat, which is great, from FSU. And so she might be able to help us out there as well, since we know sometimes we get really pointed questions.
Yeah, there have been a couple of very specific questions in some of the breakout rooms. So it's been helpful for the different colleges. If they don't feel like they all have time to give their specific answer, they can answer in the chat if they want to, or that kind of thing if you want to.
If we're watching the chat, can we also jump in there, or is that, yes, okay. Okay, we'll see what we can do.
Don't feel completely obligated to, but if you want to, it's there. Some of them you might be like, ignore, but a lot of them. And I mean, I think that people are really anxious for a chance to ask directed questions that have come up in the last few weeks, especially. So things just come up every day where you're like, I wish I could just text them and ask them. So I think that's what.
Can we just do a mic check real quick with Jacqueline and with Sonia, just to make sure we're good to go?
Hi.
Great.
Hey, Maura.
Hey, Sonia. Thank you.
Awesome. And we have FAU, FSU, UCF, Florida Poly, New College, and FIU. And FAMU's in the other breakout room. And he's so funny. He's so awesome. I'm glad he showed up. Gus is great.
Who's joining you from FAM?
Gus.
Oh, okay.
He's awesome.
who's doing, so I was comparing the presentation to like the assigned slides, and who's doing the assisting students with documented differences? More, okay. Just wanted to make sure I got that new.
Hey, just so you know, one of the questions that really surprised me, and I receive this quite often in the breakout sessions, is many college counselors wanted to know why there isn't just, for example, one application for the whole state of Florida. So be prepared. They may bring that up.
We wonder that a lot every year. Yeah. And I don't know if that's
And
your decision, but
yeah, we actually can address that. We used to have one many years ago, but the state legislature stopped funding it. And
of course they did.
so, yeah, so that's been gone for probably a decade now, I would say, but there used to be one for everybody.
That's how I applied to college.
I applied to college. It was the $25 check that you stapled to the paper back and forth. You just filled it out by hand, and there was an optional essay. Yeah, I did that.
I honestly think that, you know, if our legislature would fund us, you know, I don't think there are any of our universities that would object to being able to have a system-wide application. I think there's very similar to the SAR as well, to be honest with you, if the state would help fund these things, but they don't. And that then you're looking at what are institutional priorities and budgets and what can you do. And so that's really what's prevented us from being able to do some of those things that we think are efficiency, that you think are efficiency, but in the end, it's about the money, right?
It's just so hard on the kids. I mean, I feel like I could start that movement. I can get the parents to write, you know, and demand funding for a streamlined process. I just feel like the kids always feel like they're missing something, like because they think they have it all. And then it's like, oh, I didn't send test scores to, you know, UCF, or I was supposed to self-report to FSU, or they send the test scores to FSU. They don't send them to UCF. They don't know about, I had a kid come in here 2 days ago and say, what does this mean that I haven't filled out my Spark? I mean, they only send you like 1,000 emails and it's on your
we only send you weekly reminders.
Right. And I've only said it to you 100 times, but of course, you know.
I know. If I had a dime for every time we're hearing that, I would be a very rich woman.
Same. And then this would be doing this, but and last year I had a student at the public high school where I was working come up and say, my mom got an email that I haven't filled out the SRAR for FSU. I'm like, that was a month ago. Like the deadline was a month ago and now you're figuring it out. They don't open their emails. They don't read websites and they don't open their emails. I'm like, how do you not open your emails for a college you applied to? Like, you know, they sent you an email and you didn't open it. I don't get it. Do you know how many times I've learned that the kid got into college with them because I helped them make their portal a month or two after they applied, and I like, this is how you make your portal, and then it's like, congratulations, you got into college, congrats, okay, bye.
Well, it's funny because I had a mom yesterday that emailed me and was complaining that her son was getting all of these exciting emails from other institutions where he had been admitted, and as an FSU graduate, she wanted me to know that she was, you know, deeply concerned about our lack of exciting emails. And so I responded to her and I said, you know, we've sent 8 exciting emails to your son. He's only opened 3 of them. I mean, you know, could be, maybe he doesn't want to go to Florida State just because you went there. I don't know. It's just, oh.
I mean, in some ways it's better that she doesn't know that he received all of this, because I do have the parents who also make sure every email sent to their kid is also sent to them. So
oh, wow. Yeah.
So, and yeah. I'm not sure which is better, actually.
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting where, you know, it was the exciting emails that I thought, I was like,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Share with me what is the exciting, I mean,
yeah.
You know,
what exactly
your definition?
Yeah.
Define exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How much more exciting can we get than you're in? Like that's
I know.
We thought that was the exciting one.
I know. No.
Our dog and pony show about Tallahassee is soon to come. Yes.
We're right on it. Comedy Central right here.
Yeah. I had a parent this morning ask me if she needed to let UCF know that her daughter had been named magna cum laude. And I was like, no, you don't. I think they can kind of figure that out. Like from, they can read in context, like they're fine. And she's like, but my daughter didn't put her 300 service hours on her application. I'm like, how does she fill out her application without indicating that in her activities? That's weird. And she's like, I don't know, but I'm going to shoot an email to UCF. And I'm like, I feel like your daughter should shoot the email to UCF. Like,
We would appreciate it from the student.
like,
And there was a whole
email they
space
used
they
to
could have
apply.
put it in.
I know, I'm well aware. I'm like, I don't understand how your daughter missed reporting that the first time, but yeah, I mean, cool. Sounds good. Send them the email, but not you, your daughter. 'Cause she's
Email Gordon. Make sure they send it to Gordon.
He would enjoy that tremendously.
Yeah.
I've had to tell a lot of parents, they really like hearing from your kid, not you, the one applying to go there. You have to advocate for themselves.
They go on the list of, we're going to check their grades at the end of the first semester.
Yeah, I know. I don't think my parents ever knew what I made in a class. And I mean, they were paying a lot of money and they didn't, as long as I wasn't failing out, they were like, whatever, which I didn't fail out. So it's all good.
Good to know.
Yeah. Wish I could say the same. These kids are struggling. This year, the freshmen are struggling so badly. And it's been that's been the biggest thing. I have so many kids from last year who are contacting me, and it's been really depressing. I just wish that their first year of college was not this. But what are you going to do? The global pandemic. So yeah, they have been telling their parents they're failing out, unfortunately. So that's
Been a rough year
it's really
for everybody, for people looking at schools, starting schools, everything.
And the professors, my other job is reporting, and I reported on a story I ultimately killed because I just felt like I couldn't tell it without putting too many students in a vulnerable position on a national outlet. And I interviewed a professor who was like, I'm low grade depressed because I don't teach to black boxes usually. And this isn't ideal for me either. And I feel like I have to deliver at the same level that I would deliver in person, but that's like drowning the kids because they can't learn at the same level that they would in person. And it's like, and they don't interact with screens because they're used to interacting with technology, but not having feedback. And it's like, so I'm teaching to black boxes or to kids looking off at their second monitor or to kids watching The Office on their phone while they're listening. And that was a Stanford professor. So, he's like, this is not the way this is supposed to go. And it just is depressing, but we're all very hopeful that things will get better.
Hopefully fall is going to look a lot different. Fingers crossed.
Do you feel like things are going to be more in person in the fall? Because I can't figure that out. Okay.
I think so. I mean, I think everyone's taking it day by day because you never know when things are going to change. But I think most of us, if not all of us, are planning to have full fall, and obviously probably still masks and a bit of social distancing, but I don't think anywhere near where it is now. And I think hopefully the vaccines will make things better. We're hoping to be a mass vaccine site at UCF, and plans are in place if we can all get them, and better to be back to normal sooner rather than later.
Awesome.
Or whatever normal is.
Right.
Yeah. They're not quite normal anymore. The kids are so shell shocked. But yeah. The thing is, I will say, I think that they're so much more grateful for school now than they were like real school. Like they're not grateful for Zoom school. And they're not grateful for anything that requires Zoom, but they are more grateful for their teachers and they're more grateful for in-person classes. I think they don't take it for granted anymore. So that is one thing. Although I think that Generation Z could use a break at this point. They're resilient. They're all full up on resiliency and grit. Like they got it. That's it. They've got that. Yeah. So,
You know, it's just interesting because I think it's been so difficult for everyone, but I would say the lack of civility this year is through the roof. I mean, people don't talk to people like they should, and I think that's most unfortunate. That's just been my observation. With, you know, we know in admissions you got to have pretty thick skin, but let me tell you, there are some people that it's just this year I just feel like it's just been out of control. And honestly, probably more from parents than from students.
Oh yeah.
100%.
Have no filter.
Parents are they're brutal on us too. I mean, I've got yeah. I get a lot of very unhappy or disappointed. First of all, they don't like it if I try to suggest other schools for their kids.
Yes.
I'm very careful never to shoot down a dream school, but always to have a balanced list and to have other schools. And they don't like to hear that. They're like, why are you telling my kid they're not going to get into the school? Like, well, because they're not, A, but B, because it's your job as a parent to make sure they're going to be okay in April. Like, this is your job too. Yeah, but you're right. I suggested that we introduce a civil discourse class to our school. I got the idea from schools in Maryland that did it like 4 years ago, and can really change the culture of a school if, you know, your freshmen take a civil discourse class and learn how to talk to each other without hating each other, learn how to have difficult conversations without either bailing or, you know, being enemies for the rest of their lives. So I was like, you know, the adults in the room aren't doing it for you, modeling it for you. So I think that would be a valuable class.
Yeah, I would love to see that as a class. Is probably just as important as financial literacy at this point, to be honest.
We're pairing it with financial literacy. We're doing one semester of one and one semester of the other. So that's
awesome. That should be a model for other schools, to be honest.
I know. Well, I'm in a private school now, so there's more flexibility. I wish the public schools could do it, though. I still work so much with our public schools, and I really like it.
So there's a question in the chat about commencement. Virtual versus in person. I know UF has announced in person. Our president announced Tuesday in person. Our in person is only for this semester's graduates, and we'll figure out the students who missed commencement this year at another time. I think
FSU's we announced our commencements on Friday, I believe.
Okay.
Sometime last week. And so 11 graduation ceremonies to be able to do the social distancing. And it's only our current graduates. But yes, we are having in-person commencement ceremonies.
Yeah.
At UCF, we're going to do both. We're going to do in person with a number of ceremonies, but then we're going to have our grad walk, which we started a few semesters ago. That isn't, but if they want to walk across the stage, so they'll have the option of doing either.
Jacqueline, has FIU announced?
Not sure. I'm checking right now.
Okay.
Florida Poly's is going to be in person for all of the missed graduations on May 2nd at Tiger Stadium here in Lakeland. So it's going to be outside.
Okay. Sonia, do you know what New College is doing yet?
They haven't announced yet. Do you think they're actually asking about ours though, instead of their high school colleagues, to find out what they're doing for their seniors?
I know our seniors are going, the public schools are all going to graduate at UCF.
Good to know.
We'll be there.
Freddie, I can leave, right? I said I can leave, Freddie, right? Okay, bye. Have a good day, guys.
Bye. All right, it looks like everybody's coming back. Okay. So welcome back to the general room session. I'm Allison Slater-Tate, and I am the Director of College Counseling at Lake Mary Preparatory School in Lake Mary. We're so excited today to have so many representatives from our state university system here in Florida to speak to us. We have representatives from FAU, FSU, UCF, Florida Polytechnic, New College, and FIU today. And I know as a school counselor, I was just saying, it's always so good to speak to state university representatives because there are so many different aspects to all of our great state universities that we need to know to advise our students well. So I know that you're all really excited to hear from them, and I'm not going to take up any more time, but thank you for being here and thank you for advocating for our students. I'm going to share my screen for your slides, but go ahead and take it away.
Great, thank you, Allison. And the first slide I'll be working with is the one with all of our logos. Yeah. It's the one.
I have to get.
Well, good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Costello. I am the Director for Strategic Recruitment and External Relations at UCF. And on behalf of all of us that will be chatting today and all our colleagues that aren't with us from the state system, we're just really happy to be joining all of you this morning and to be able to provide some information about the state university system here in Florida. Although many of you are probably very familiar with the SUS, with all of our institutions, or at least some of our institutions, we wanted to start off our time with you by giving a brief overview of who we are and what the universities are all about. The SUS is made up of 12 institutions, which in total is educating well over 300,000 students in any given semester. We range in size from under 1,000 students to 70,000 students and everything in between. Geographically, we're diverse, located in small cities like Pensacola, Gainesville, Boca Raton, Fort Myers, large cities like Jacksonville, our state capital of Tallahassee, and large urban cities like Tampa, Orlando, and Miami. The SUS also offers students many different types of institutions within our system. We have large research institutions. We have our public liberal arts honors college. We have a university dedicated to STEM, an HBCU, and several HSIs. All in all, the options at the public universities in Florida are endless. You can flip to the next slide. It's difficult to sum up 12 universities in just a few slides. So we wanted to really highlight some of the things that we feel are impactful to your students. This slide contains some figures about ultimate outcomes, employment after graduation, wages of our graduates, and the fact that 35% of our graduates earn higher degrees within 10 years of earning their baccalaureate degrees with us. Next slide. As a state system, we're very proud that US News and World Report has ranked Florida the #1 system in the US for higher education multiple times. This ranking is based upon graduation rates and affordability, among other things. In the past 5 years, graduation rates at the SUS institutions are up 9.5%, while at the same time, we're reducing the cost per degree for students, making that degree more affordable, and ultimately a really, really excellent return on their investment and their family's investment. We all know that even though we have extremely affordable tuition here in the state system, it's still a huge outlay of money for students for a college education. Next slide. Oh, that's the one, yeah. And we're really now at this point going to each take some topics that we feel are important. And we've heard from the organizers of the event that you've expressed were important. And we wanted to cover them for the system at large, not our own institution. So we're not going to be specifically about our institution. And I'm going to start off with services for our first generation students. The SUS has a strong commitment to supporting our students throughout their time on our campus. Support mechanisms are in place to assist all the students, but especially populations that historically have more challenges transitioning. Sometimes there's confusion about who is considered a first generation student. The most commonly used definition is a student whose parent or legal guardians have not earned a bachelor's degree. Programs for these students, as well as other underrepresented students, typically focus on things like building college success strategies, helping students know about resources on campus that can assist them academically, financially, co-curricularly, all of those things. Many of these programs also assist pairing students up with peer mentors in some cases, but also they give them professional peer mentors, maybe faculty and staff who are first generation students themselves, to give them students that opportunity to really connect with a professional who is in their shoes. Unfortunately, there's not time for me to detail all of the programs for all 12 of us because there are so many, but our best recommendation would be for students to do a simple search on our individual websites, type in first generation. Many of us have specific offices that work with first gen students, such as the Office of First Generation Student Success at both UF and FAU, the CARE program at FSU, the Multicultural Academic and Support Services Office at UCF. Many of us also have TRIO programs like at FAMU and FGCU and USF. A number of us have been recognized for our work with first generation and underserved students. FIU, for example, has been recognized by the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators as a first forward university for its commitment to serving first generation students. And there are also scholarship opportunities for many of these students. And again, a search on our website is a relatively easy thing to do and could be really financially beneficial to a student because they have the scholarship money earmarked for them. And a lot of times it goes unused because students don't know to really do a look for the scholarship opportunities that are out there. And now I have the pleasure of handing this off to my friend and colleague from Florida State University, Haga Ferguson.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And hey, everyone. Good to see your smiling faces. Hopefully one of these days we'll be able to see each other again. I'm Haga Ferguson, Director of Admissions at Florida State. And for those that I have not yet met, I hope to do so in the future. But I have the pleasure of addressing sort of the big elephant in the room and a pain point for many of us this last year. Do students need to have an SAT or ACT test score? So yes, if you want to go back to the other slide, that'd be great. The answer to that is yes. It is a requirement that students need to have an ACT or SAT test score. And that is an admissions regulation for the Florida Board of Governors. And so we were not test optional this year. And I will tell you that I have not heard anything about loosening that up for next year. So I am not overly optimistic. And so so far, no changes in terms of the testing requirement. I do think it's really important that everyone understands that, you know, this is not an institutional choice by the university. And so we are adhering to a requirement. We are all very sensitive to the challenges that our students are facing in being able to sit for an exam or retest for an exam. And so I think it's really important to keep that in mind, that we know about the challenges. And so I could just speak for myself, and as FSU were making our admissions decision, we were very cognizant of the students challenging with testing. And so that was somewhat reflected in our decisions this year, to be honest with you. And I suspect many of my colleagues would say the same thing as they are making their decisions. But it is what it is, which is one of my favorite sayings. It's here to stay for now, and if it changes, we will be sure to share that news with you. Next slide. So, you know, one of the most frequently asked questions that we get from students and their family members are, you know, is it better to take AP versus dual enrollment or taking IB courses? And I think you're going to find from all of us across the board, we will come back and counter with a different question, which is, what's the best fit for the student? Because I think you're going to find that there are some students that absolutely the IB program is a great fit. And then there are some students that would not be a great fit. And so if I could use my daughter as an example, as much as I love the IB program, she definitely would not be a good fit for the IB program. It's too structured for her. And so, you know, as you work with students and you work with the family members, you know, I think that they need to be picking a curriculum that is a better fit for them, because all of these AP, ACE, IB, approved dual enrollment courses are all going to be weighted the same in our application review process. So there's no difference there in terms of the weighting. It's really more about what's being offered at your school and what is the best fit for the student. The one thing I will say about dual enrollment is, one, in the Counseling for Future Education handbook that comes out every year in the state of Florida, if you don't have it, make sure you get it. You know, there's a listing that are what are the approved dual enrollment courses. And I find that sometimes students are wanting to sort of dip their toe into taking business classes, et cetera, you know, when really we are wanting them to really focus more on what we would call the liberal arts curriculum. So making sure you're taking your English comp classes, making sure you're taking your math or college algebra, sciences, et cetera, instead of really going into business marketing, et cetera, because that is going to be the focus of when you're coming to our institution in terms of what type of courses to take. The other thing is about dual enrollment is that they are starting their college curriculum. There is no going back. So, you know, when they sign up to take it initially, it's because everybody agrees that this student is going to do a great job in the course and be successful. Well, what happens if they don't? And so, you know, if they earn an F in college algebra, MAC 1105, that's going to be with them throughout their time in college. And it will be in their cumulative college GPA as we evaluate for graduation from college as well. And so some students don't really think about that at the time that they're signing up for it, because of course they think they're going to get an A. But, you know, just letting them know and be aware of that this grade that you're earning is going to be with you for the rest of your life. It's not going to go away. The other point I'd like to make is with AP. Generally with the APs, if you're taking the AP exam and you get a score of 3 or higher, you'll get college credit for it. Each of our universities have information according to what the AP exam is and what that would equate to in terms of college credit. So very helpful for students to be aware of that. Same thing with our IB diploma holders. I know at Florida State, you know, you're coming in with the IB diploma, you will be awarded 45 hours worth of college credit. And so allowing the students to pursue double majors, graduate in 3 years, lots of different options there for the student. But I think, again, really the focus needs to be what is the best fit for the student. We are looking at the rigor that the student is taking as we do our holistic review and how successful they are in completing that rigor. And so again, not trying for the students to do what they think we want to see. We want to see the student being able to successfully complete the journey that they have set out and hopefully have made that as a good choice. I think that was my last slide. So I think it's over to the next person.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Haga. This is Sonia Wu from New College of Florida. One of the questions that we got was, what sort of advantages do students have if they're completing the AA while they're still in high school? And one of the things that we all agreed was helpful to those students is that they can apply on the basis of freshman admission requirements. The requirements for transfer admission will vary from school to school, but we do need to take into much more careful account how that student's coursework is going to transfer in specifically to their major. They also get access to the freshman scholarship programs. And I think for most of us, the freshman scholarship programs are much more varied and provide better coverage in most cases. And I know at New College specifically, when we have a student come in with an AA, if they need longer to graduate than just 2 years, We'll cover them through 8 semesters, so long as they maintain good academic standing for that scholarship. We also give them the same kind of access to freshman advising and freshman housing, other kinds of services that are really directed to students who are going off to college for the first time. So we like to acknowledge that even if they've earned the AA and have all of that credit coming in, they are still essentially, they're kind of like first time in college students, essentially. They also have an opportunity as students who come in with a lot of credit to have a chance to start that work in their major right from the beginning, but not have the same kind of strict time pressure that will apply to a student who's coming in as what I refer to as a true transfer, somebody who's done significant college work after high school graduation. They may be interested in adding a second major or just exploring or adding in a minor. And so they have some more time flexibility in that sense. And as Hege mentioned, there are potential unintended consequences when a student comes in with an AA. So they'll want to keep an eye on things like how are they doing while they're in those courses, and how will they segue into work in their major, in particular if they're thinking they might like to go into one of the fields that's a limited access program. So of course they should be working with the institutions that they're talking to. Can we have the next slide, please? So another question was about affordability. You know, we've got this honkin' great scholarship program in Florida with Bright Futures, which we all hope will continue to cover exceptionally well students' ability to pay for college if they meet the requirements. But I think it is very important to point out that Florida is very deeply committed to keeping its public education as affordable as possible. We do rank number 4 in the country in terms of having low student debt. And New College in particular rates exceptionally well in that. Our Florida schools, though, also have our own individual programs for students to have not just merit-based scholarship funding, but also need-based grant funding. And we also have access through the Office of Student Financial Assistance, access to the Florida Student Assistance Grant. And we're able to use that both for Florida residents and out-of-state students. So one of the things that's very important to tell your students is to file a FAFSA. The FAFSA for almost all of us, for almost every need-based grant, is going to be the gateway to being considered for that kind of funding. And it's important to remember also that there are some other types of awards that are available through the state of Florida. We also have the Benequisto Scholarship, which at least currently is set up to do fantastic funding, full cost of attendance in most cases for students who meet the requirements for coming to us as National Merit Scholars. Of course, the state puts all kinds of specific rules attached to that, but we even have some out-of-state students who may come to us with full cost of attendance funding. So do make sure your students, please, please, please file the FAFSA, and please, please, please make themselves as eligible as possible for need-based funding by hitting all of the appropriate deadlines. If they file by Halloween every single year, they should be in very good shape for making sure that they meet all institutional priority deadlines. I think our next slide is on serving undocumented and DACA students, and Mara Fleshner from FAU will handle that.
I'll handle it. Thank you, Sonia. This is Jacqueline Janusis, and I'm an associate director at FIU and handling undergraduate domestic students. So keeping a little bit on the affordability discussion, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how the SUS supports undocumented and DACA students. So back in 2014, the state of Florida passed legislation allowing all eligible undocumented students to receive an out-of-state fee waiver that will grant them in-state tuition to public institutions in the state of Florida. How an undocumented student is eligible is they have to attend a Florida secondary school for 3 consecutive years before they graduate. And then they also have to have an application for enrollment in a state university system, a state university or college within 24 months of graduation. And also, of course, we have to have a submission of official high school transcripts to verify that they did indeed graduate from a Florida high school. Now, this population of student, it is important to note that they are still classified as an out-of-state student. Therefore, they are not eligible for any federal financial aid or any Bright Future scholarships, unfortunately. For DACA students, they can fill out the FAFSA. There may be some institutional money that they may be able to get, but nothing federal or state. That would have to be institutional. And then next, we have Michelle from Florida Poly.
Awesome, thank you so much. So there were questions in regards to mathematics courses and progression for students to make sure that they're preparing for their time in a college or university. So a few things that I want to mention about that is really making sure that depending on what a student is wanting to achieve, what their aspirations are for a major and then potential career outcomes, is to make sure that they're taking coursework that's going to help give them the right skills. So if they are looking for something that is STEM or business related, really making sure that they have the right building blocks. So they've done well in Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and geometry, taking courses like trigonometry and pre-calculus, but really trying to strive to get to a calculus course while in high school, whether it be an honors calculus, a regular level high school course, AP, dual enrollment, whatever it might be that they have access to, and taking advantage of those opportunities to get that really important experience in dealing with the calculus curriculum. Just want to mention that calculus isn't just necessary, or pre-calculus isn't just necessary for students that are wanting to go into STEM or business, and that includes the medical field as well. It's important to note, but it also looks excellent in the application process. So it helps students look very competitive when they've taken those advanced math classes to show those critical thinking skills, that analytical thinking. And so that's something for them to consider and to think about. Now, I know one question I typically get being with Florida Poly from younger students and from counselors dealing with maybe freshmen or sophomores is that they don't always know freshman year what they want to study in college, but they get to that point of freshman year of what track do I start on in my math classes. So making sure that they're preparing for the best possible outcome. So even if they don't know they want to do STEM, still being on a track to take appropriate coursework, just to make sure they don't kind of cut the feet out from under themselves, make sure that they are still preparing, that if they do decide to go into STEM, they have that strong math building block set up to be successful if they do decide to go into it. And if they decide not to do anything in STEM or business or the medical field, all that they've lost is they've gotten to learn some excellent calculus and mathematics principles. So definitely something for students to think about. And the last thing that I do want to mention is that universities will all have different testing measurements for students for placement. So they'll have, here at Florida Poly, we require the ALEX math placement exam. At a state college, it would be the PERT. At other institutions here in the SUS, it may be different or institutional type of assessment that they utilize. So that is something that will help them as they finish up senior year and taking those placement exams to make sure they're starting off in the right class to be successful at the different institutions. All right, so that is all that I want to mention right now. So I'm going to go ahead and hand over the presentation to my colleague at FAU, Maura Flashner.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our session, and seeing some really good questions in the chat. Hopefully we'll have some time to get to those here in a little bit, but some of the questions we saw in registration had to do with assisting students with a documented learning difference. So please know that at every state university, we have an office. Usually it is called something like accessibility services that helps students with documented learning differences to navigate the college experience. It's really important that those students and their family members are proactive in asking about how to contact those folks. Most of those offices at each university are going to require that a student register with them. I know at FAU, we do an intake appointment where our staff sit down with the student virtually or in person and go through their documentation, talk about what learning assistants they've used, and what they're thinking would support them in the college environment. This is required of every university that receives federal financial aid. So this is every university that your students are looking at needs to be providing some support and some services. There are a lot of different types of accommodations that are available, from note-taking to extended time and tests, different location for testing to maybe eliminate distractions. Assistive technology is something we're seeing a lot of investment from our respective universities to help students be successful in the classroom. I know with the change to online learning, captioning and access to captioning has been incredibly important for our students. And so many of our universities are investing in a number of different Zoom add-ons or WebEx add-ons that assist students in making sure that they have adequate access to the learning environment. Next, please. All right, and one of our favorite questions is talking about the campus environment and what we can expect. So just in case anybody's forgotten the last 12 months of 15 months of March, we want to just sort of walk through, we all went online about a year ago. Gosh, it's actually about a year ago, almost to the day, right? In the summer, we again shifted university instruction to be online. Lots of different methods of online teaching. And in the fall, we also adapted. The majority of our courses went online. Many of us have a number of different nursing or other programs that involve clinical experiences. Clinicals are one thing that you really can't move online. Patients are usually in person. So with the exception of clinicals, I think we saw the majority of courses be online in the fall. In the spring, we started seeing more courses being introduced in person, not just clinicals, but some of the performing arts classes, as well as, one thing to keep in mind is that each of our universities have different guidelines on the number of people who can be in a particular space at the same time. And so classes, labs, computer labs, library space has all needed to be modified to accommodate those different space and sizing requirements. And depending on the size of a campus, we all have different abilities to host students in person. But we did see a significant increase in in-person activity this spring. And then the majority of us are making plans for a significant reintroduction of in-person courses, in-person experiences for the summer and for the fall. A couple of I know FSU, after they admitted students, they had a note on their social media about what some of the expectations might be. Everything that we're doing as it relates to COVID, as you all understand, is very fluid. So these are our plans and these are our intentions, and certainly time will tell. I also think it's really important to understand that we have always, the collective we, have always offered in-person courses. And so online courses. And so online education and access through online is an important resource for our students, many of whom are working or have families, or the time of the class is easier for them to navigate in an online instruction. So online's not going away. It will certainly be reduced as we're able to return more in person. But I know for us at FAU, our online courses are the first to fill in the summer outside of the pandemic, because that's what works best for our students during that time period. So that's a couple of examples for you. And I believe that's the conclusion of our slides, the things we wanted to make sure we saw through registration to address. A lot of questions in the chat about the use of SSAR and Common App and Spark and things of that nature. So I think it's okay for me to say, I've tried to put this in the chat, Common Application and SSAR are terrific tools, but they cost the university significant dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. And we don't all have the resources for that sort of investment. And so I believe it's fair to say UCF created Spark because they had the resources to do that, and that was the best decision for their campus. FIU has not gone to Common App or SSAR because they believe that is the best decision for their campus. So we understand that there is a uniformity that helps students and helps families. Back in the day, when I applied to a state university school, we had, and I think Allison and I shared this experience earlier, there was one paper application and we just checked all the boxes. So for my brace advisors, I know back, if you've been around a minute, we had that. And times have changed, and the way the BOG funds different initiatives has changed. And so we don't receive funding from the BOG for any of these resources. They do fund, thankfully, the electronic transcript system in the state of Florida for Florida Publics. But it really becomes a resource issue. So we know that it's hard for families to keep track. We know for out-of-state folks, a lot of this sounds like mumbo jumbo because it's a bit of a Florida thing. But that's probably the best answer we can give just as it relates to resources. All right. The last couple of questions I see are about business students taking calculus and math during COVID online. So would any of my friends like to talk about those couple of things?
Yeah, I'm happy to add some comments. So when it comes to the business, I may need someone to chime in a little bit more. We have a business analytics program, so we do require actually every single one of our students to complete Calculus 1, but our business analytics program is a little bit different than a traditional business program, but with some similarities. But I do want to specifically, though, talk about the question or the comment about the online coursework. I think I can speak for our colleagues when I say we understand that this has been a very difficult and different year for students. Haga had mentioned the holistic admissions process and how we are looking at an entire student and trying to get a full view of each student individually. So we are attempting to do that, and we are working towards that. So we do understand that this has been difficult. I do encourage any students that you have that have been in that situation, have the student contact their admissions counselor. There have been ways for them to share that through the Common App with the new question on the Common App this year, but also to share that through their work with their admissions counselors. But that is something that we understand has happened, and that we're aware that this is a very difficult year for students, and we're definitely trying to work with them as much as we can.
If I could add to that, specifically for our major in the College of Business, and at FSU, the College of Business is a limited access major, meaning there are specific courses, specific GPA that students have to have in order for them to be able to clear their major within the College of Business. So I think I like to just turn it a little bit to kind of say, I'm not expecting our incoming new students to have completed business calculus. Am I expecting them to have to complete it while at Florida State? Yes, absolutely. But it is not something that, as I review it holistically, that they have to have if they are indicating that they're a business major. Because in truth, we all know, they're going to change their major 2 to 3 times in college anyway. So I don't put a lot of stock into that. I will tell you, though, that, as we look at our accepted student group, 57% of our accepted students had calculus or higher. So, they are in a pool where they are competing for spaces with students that has taken the opportunity to challenge themselves beyond what is the minimum for graduation or minimum for entry into the state university. And sometimes that's where they get a little confused because, they say, well, I did what I needed to graduate. Yes, you did. But I have other students that have gone far and above what the minimum are, and they are going to be stronger in the applicant pool. And so that even goes for my students that are not a science or STEM major or a business major. You know, just because you want to be a dance major, we still encourage you to continue to challenge yourself by taking more advanced level math courses in high school, because the research shows that the more math that you take in high school, the easier is the transition for when you have to take 2 math classes at Florida State. So, you know, just overall, we want them to take as much math as possible, but I recognize calculus is not going to be for everyone, but keep on taking math.
I'm going to jump in and say, I see a couple of questions in the chat that I wanted to direct to whoever wants to take it. And that is, by the way, calculus is a huge question for our students. And I want to clarify, just because I think this is true, when you are looking at that pool of students, you are comparing students within their own high school against each other, like what they have taken compared to the other students that they. So when I counsel kids, I say, if you have a large pool of students applying to FSU who are going to have calculus, it's going to be more important that you also have calculus for admission. I mean, it's not right for every student. But one thing that has come up for my students and that I see in the chat is, for students with learning differences and reaching out to that accessibility office, at what point in the application or admission process do you do that? And is consideration taken into account when you look at a student's transcript and their application that they have this accommodation? Is it something that people should disclose during applications or not?
So thanks for the question. There was a question, I think, on the SUS application maybe 10 years ago or so around differing abilities, and the BOG was sued, so it's no longer on the application, and it is not something we can consider, any of us can consider, as a part of our initial application. If a student discloses it, every college probably is going to vary about how that might be handled in the independent or holistic review process. But, you know, if a student is receiving accommodation, then there is an expectation that they are using that accommodation to perform at the same level as other students. Whether that is the case or not may be a different issue. But in the initial review, that is not something we are allowed to consider. If a student appeals their admissions decision and indicates a diagnosis that has impacted their ability to be successful in their entire academic subjects or a particular subject, then each of our universities consults our accessibility services area to get their professional opinion on the ability of that student to be successful and the support services that we have at our institutions to help those students be successful at our institutions. So I know that's specific and vague kind of all at the same time, but there's a lot of legalities around the ADA and the asking of that question and the disclosure of that information. So while some of us have been directors of admissions for a minute, accessibility, the laws around ADA and services and testing and diagnosis is not our expertise. So we call in our experts on campus to consult with them and get their opinions and their assessment of how that student might thrive on our campuses. At the end of the day, we all want students to thrive on our campuses. If we don't have the environment, if the student really isn't ready, if the student isn't prepared, that's going to influence our decision. I will also say that the accommodations that students receive at the university sometimes will help students with an exception to course requirements for graduation. So one of the examples might be taking language classes or a foreign language class, right? So because of a processing ability, a student may not thrive in foreign language courses. I have seen universities that I have worked on in the past allow a student in that situation, for example, to take a cultural appreciation class or a country appreciation class, you know, like a Spanish nation cultural appreciation class, or history of Europe, or some other way to still appreciate cultural differences with not being able to be successful in a foreign language. So each of our universities' offices would support students if they could make exception recommendations to the academic side of the university to still help them meet graduation requirements.
If I could just add something really quickly, a lot of times when students go to appeal, they will ask us what documentation they should provide as part of the appeal. And that is really not something that we can give them advice on. They are welcome to submit what they want to submit, but I know at UCF anyway, we've been told by our general counsel that's not something that you can throw out and say, this is what you should provide us. So it's really, our answer sometimes seems vague to the family and not very helpful when we say, you know, you can submit whatever you would like, but that is because it is a legal issue. Like Maura said, there's a lot of legal ramifications that come up with this.
Okay, we had another question in the chat that I thought would be good for you to address, which is for a high school that doesn't have a dual enrollment articulation with a state college, or might also not offer an AP level or IB, ACE, whatever level course. How do you look at students coming from those high schools, and how do you determine that they are as prepared to come into your campuses as the ones that do have those exams? Is there something that high schools should be doing to help them show that, or do you just read it in context of the school?
Allison, I think you mentioned this earlier, but to kind of reiterate, we do read the students' records in context of that individual school. So it's not like we look at the student, compare him to the other school down the road. We don't. We're looking at what is being offered at that particular institution and how is the student taking advantage of what is available. So there will never be a question of a student being penalized for not being able to take AP or dual enrollment, because frankly, just here in the state of Florida, that's going to vary greatly throughout the state of Florida. And, you know, we deal with a very wide spectrum of different schools. We have some of the most rural schools possible where maybe dual enrollment is the only type of rigor that's available, to, you know, schools that have all, you know, ACE, AP, IB, dual enrollment, etc. So it just varies. So we are going to just review with what is being offered at the school, and the student would not be penalized for not having the opportunity to take other types of rigorous curriculum.
Okay, we are getting kicked out in a minute. So I'm going to thank everybody for coming. School counselors, thank you for coming. Independent counselors, thank you for coming. Our state university system representatives, thank you so much. On behalf of SACAC, we'd love for you to check out sacac.org for membership. It's $45 a person, so it's pretty affordable. And if your schools can reinforce it. The virtual annual conference is coming up in April for 3 days. It is free for members, and it is also free for public school counselors. So please check that out. Thank you so much, and have a great Friday, and go get vaccinated. Yay. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.